This lesson is about rewriting equations and formulas. The first thing we're going to talk about is how an equation that has two or more variables is called a literal equation. The equations we've been working on may have multiple x's throughout them, but that's still considered one variable. So what we're talking about is maybe area equals length times width. So you have the length and the width, those two variables. That's going to be a literal equation. And to rewrite literal equations, because we can't really solve them all the way down because we have more than one variable, we're going to solve for one variable in terms of the other variables. So let's look and see what this is going to look like. You still have the equation, so we're still going to just go ahead and draw that line down our equal sign like we've been doing. It's going to help us keep things separated. So if you look at this equation, 2y plus 5x equals 6. We're solving for y, which means we want y equals something. We want it all by itself on one side of the equal sign. So that means we have this y here. We need to move this positive 5x over to the other side of the equal sign. Because we're crossing our line, we're going to need to do inverse operation. So we're going to subtract 5x from both sides. Now, 5x minus 5x is 0, and that leaves us with 2y equals 6 minus 5x. Now, because 6 doesn't have an x with it, these are not like terms, so we cannot combine them. So we just have to leave this 6 minus 5x. Now, we're a little bit closer to getting this y by itself, but we still have this times 2. So to move this multiply by 2 over across the equal sign, we're going to do the inverse, which is divide by 2. And so we're going to divide everything by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and that leaves us with y. 6 divided by 2 works out evenly. That's 3, so we're going to go ahead and simplify that. We're going to bring our minus sign down. 5 halves x does not work out evenly. It's going to give us a decimal, so we are just going to leave this 5 halves x. And we have y by itself, so that's as far as we can solve down, so we're done. Okay, so let's look at some of these equations. Let's go ahead and draw our lines down our equal signs. I'm going to go ahead and do all of these lines down our equal sign. Now, each of these, it says it's solving for y. They have to tell you when there's multiple variables which variable you're solving for. So that means we have to get y alone. So on this one, we're going to need to move this negative x across the equal sign. So we're going to do the inverse, which is plus x. Negative x plus x is 0, and so that leaves us with 5y. Bring your equal sign down. This 10 plus x, they're not like terms. To be like terms, you have to have the same variable to the same power. So we can't combine those, so we're just going to leave this 10 plus x. Now we still have to get rid of this times 5, and the inverse of times 5 is divided by 5. So we're going to divide every little piece by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and so there's my y right by itself. 10 divided by 2 works out evenly, so we're, 10 divided by 5 works out evenly as 2, so we're going to bring that down. And we can't do x divided by 5 because we don't know what x is, so we're going to leave that just as x divided by 5. On our next problem, we're still solving for y. We have the same directions on all these problems. I need to move this positive 4x across my equal sign, so to do the opposite of that, we would subtract 4x off both sides. 4x minus 4x is 0. You can't drop the minus sign. We've got to bring that minus sign down as a negative sign. And so we've got negative 4y equals, can't combine 1 and that negative 4x because they're not like terms. Now, we've got to continue to get this y by itself. We've got to divide by negative 4. And remember, we're not just dividing one side, we're dividing both sides and everything on both sides. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is y equals 1 divided by negative 4 does not work out evenly, so we're just going to leave that as our fraction. We've got a negative 4 divided by a negative 4 turns out to be a positive x. So we're going to bring this down as plus x. On our last problem, we're still solving for y, so we're going to move this 6x across the equal sign by subtracting 6x from both sides. 6x minus 6x is 0, and so that leaves us with a positive 3y on this side. We can't combine 12 minus 6x because they're not like terms, so we're just going to bring down 12 minus 6x. Still trying to get y isolated or by itself, so we have to do the inverse of multiplying by 3, which is dividing by 3. So we're going to divide every piece by 3, every term. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and so that leaves us with y. 6x divided by 3 works out evenly as 2x. I'm going to bring my minus sign down. And 12 divided by 3 also works out evenly as 4. And so y is by itself. This is as far down as we can go on this problem also. Sometimes we have formulas. This is a pretty lengthy formula for the surface area of a cone. We have S equals pi r squared plus pi r L. Remember, whenever you're using an L, to use a cursive L, because then it doesn't look like a 1. And we're solving for L. So we want to get L by itself. So if you'll look at this, you have, like we talked about in class, these two terms, just like what we've been dealing with the x's and y's. They just look a little different because they've got the pi in there. This pi r squared is being added to this L. So we want to do the opposite of that. We want to subtract pi r squared off both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract pi r squared off both sides. Pi r squared minus pi r squared is just 0. And so we're left with pi times r times L on this side. And we're left with S minus pi r squared on this side. Now over here, we've still got this times pi and this times r. They're being multiplied by this L. The inverse of multiplication is division. So we are going to divide by pi times r on both sides. Pi divided by pi is 1. R divided by r is 1. And so we're left with the L all by itself like we're supposed to. Over here, we're just going to leave this S divided by pi over r minus pi r squared divided by pi over r. And I apologize for my handwriting. I'm using my slate again, so it's just a little bit harder to write with. Let me see if I can't write this just a little bit better. Minus pi r squared divided by pi over r. And that's going to be equal to my L. Okay, so let's look at these problems. To find this area of a rectangle, let's look at number 4. We have area equals base times height. They're asking us to solve for the red variable, which is the b. To get the b by itself, they're multiplying by h. The inverse of multiplying by h would be to divide by h. H divided by h is 1, and so that leaves us with a b. We can't do anything with a divided by h, so we leave it a divided by h. And so our final answer for number 4 looks something like this. That's number 4. Number 5, we have I equals PRT. That's principal times rate times time. That's our simple interest formula. They're asking us to solve for P, so we want P all by itself. Well, if you'll notice, they're multiplying by R and T. There's no other terms being added or subtracted to have to move over to the other side. So we're just going to go ahead and deal with this multiplying by R and T. The inverse of that would be to divide by R and also T. R divided by R and T divided by T both kind of cancel each other out because they become 1. And so we're left with P by itself. I can't do anything with this I divided by R times T, so I just leave it. And so that is my final answer. Oops, if I can get my pen to work here. Sorry. All right, let's do number 6. See if we can't get it a little bit neater on here. So we're solving for h. We have this 2 pi r squared that's being added. Let's get rid of that term first. And so to do that, we're going to subtract 2 pi. Okay, let's see what's going on here. We're going to subtract 2 pi r squared off both sides. 2 pi r squared minus 2 pi r squared is 0, and that leaves us with 2 pi r h. Can't combine these there's terms over here because they're not like, so we're left with s minus 2 pi r squared. We're solving for h because that's our red variable, so we don't want to divide by 2 pi r. So we're going to divide by 2 pi r on this side. And to make this just not look quite as scary, instead of dividing both sides individually, we're going to do them together. That's another option. The reason why we've been splitting them up on the x and y problems is because of whenever we get ready to do slope, but on these formulas it's okay to leave them together. 2 divided by 2, pi divided by pi, r divided by r, all simplify to 1, which leaves our h all by itself. This over here, we could do some simplifying, but on the formulas, we do them a little bit different, so you don't have to simplify. You can leave it to, I did it again, s minus 2 pi r squared divided by 2 pi r. If you went ahead and simplified this down to s minus r equals h, that'll work too, but that's not necessary. Okay, let's look at an example like this. It says write the formula for area of a triangle. So all they want us to do for part A is to say area equals base times height divided by 2. That is our formula for finding area of a triangle. So we've done everything in part A that we need to do. Let's move on to part B. It says solve the formula for B. So let's come over here. If I'm going to solve this formula, this area equals base times height divided by 2. If I'm going to solve that for B, I need to get rid of this divided by 2 and this times h. The inverse of divided by 2 is times 2. So I'm going to do that on both sides. This simplifies to 1 and leaves me with base times height on this side and leaves me with 2 times area on this side. Still trying to get b by itself, I have to get rid of this times h, which is divided by h. So I'm going to do that on both sides. H divided by h simplifies to 1 and leaves me with a b. I can't do anything with this, so I'm going to leave it as 2a divided by h. And so I have solved this formula for b. So we finished everything for the B section of this problem. So we're going to move on to C. It says use the new formula. That's the formula that we just came up with to find the base of the triangle. So what we're going to do is we're going to plug our numbers in for our triangle over here. We're going to keep our 2 because that's our constant. We're going to multiply that times our area, which they tell us over here is 36. And we are going to divide that by our height, which they tell us over here is 6. And so that should give us our base. So whenever we do this, now all we have to do is follow the order of operations. 2 times 36 is 72, and 72 divided by 6 is 12. So we know that 12 is equal to B, which means our base of our triangle is 12 millimeters. Okay, let's refresh a couple on these equations here and we will be done. If I'm solving for y, these are the most important. These are going to be the ones that are leading us into slope. If I have this 1/3 x plus y equals 4, and I'm solving for y, I'm going to do the inverse of this positive 1/3 x by subtracting 1/3 x off both sides. Excuse me, that was a terrible subtraction sign. 1/3 x minus 1/3 x is 0, and so that leaves me with y equals, can't combine these like terms because, can't combine the terms because they're not like terms, so I end up with 4 minus 1/3 x, and so I have solved for y. Last problem here. People get scared whenever they see fractions in pi, and as you can see, this fraction problem over here, we didn't even have to do any operations with fractions, so there was nothing scary about that. Same thing with our pi. We're solving for y, so we're going to move this positive 7x over by subtracting 7x. We do not want to change pi to 3.14. We want to leave it pi. This 7x minus 7x leaves us with a negative 2y. Pi minus 7x, not like terms, can't combine everything, so we're going to leave it there. Got to do the inverse of multiplying by negative 2, which is dividing by negative 2. And so we're going to do that to remember everything here. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is y. Pi divided by negative 2, we're just going to leave as pi over negative 2. Negative 7 divided by negative 2. Remember, a negative divided by a negative does become a positive, so we're going to just change this to a positive 7/2 x, and you have solved for y, and you're done.